Sup you beautiful people, hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to a brand new episode of What If Deku Mastered the Mera Mera no Mi. Imagine Izuku Midoriya, wielding the devastating power of Ace's Mera Mera no Mi. How would his fights change? What would a firebending hero look like in My Hero Academia? This isn't just a fantasy. We're diving deep into the explosive possibilities of Deku as a flame fruit user and how it rewrites everything you thought you knew. If you guys enjoy this What If, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other What Ifs in the channel after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. The weight of secrecy pressed down on Izuku's shoulders like a physical force as he made his way through the familiar streets of Musutafu toward Takoba Municipal Beach Park. Every step carried him closer to answers, or potentially deeper into danger, but the uncertainty gnawed at him worse than any fear of physical harm. What if this is a trap? The thought had circled through his mind like a hungry vulture since yesterday's mysterious message. What if someone wants to dissect me to understand how devil fruits work? But underneath, the fear burned something stronger, desperate hope. For the first time in his life, he possessed real power, the kind that could save people, protect the innocent, make a genuine difference in the world. If this mysterious contact could help him master it safely, the risk might be worth taking. The early evening sun painted the industrial district in shades of amber and gold as Izuku approached the beach. The same route he'd taken 2 days ago when his world had been fundamentally different. When he'd been quirkless, hopeless, just another casualty of genetic lottery. Now every step sent subtle warmth radiating from his core, a constant reminder of how much had changed. His mother was positioned 3 blocks away with a clear sightline to the beach entrance, armed with her cell phone and strict instructions to call for hero backup if he didn't check in every 15 minutes. It wasn't much of a safety net, but it was better than going in completely blind. The debris field looked exactly as he'd left it, mountains of discarded appliances and household waste creating an artificial landscape of abandonment. But now Izuku's enhanced senses picked up details he'd missed before. The way rust particles caught the light like scattered embers, the subtle temperature variations between metal and plastic surfaces, the smell of salt and decay that spoke to years of tidal action wearing away at civilization's refuse. He picked his way carefully through the junk maze toward the water's edge, hyper-aware of every shadow that might conceal a threat. The beach felt different now that he knew others were tracking devil fruit activity. What had once been his private sanctuary of misery now felt exposed, vulnerable. "You're early," said a familiar voice from behind an overturned refrigerator. "That's good. Punctuality is important in this business." Izuku spun around, flames instinctively flickering along his arms in response to the surprise. But the figure that emerged from the shadows wasn't some shadowy government agent or villainous researcher. It was All Might, not the towering symbol of peace from television and news broadcasts, but the skeletal, deflated form Izuku had encountered on that rooftop 2 days ago. The man who had crushed his dreams with brutal honesty, who had told him that heroes needed quirks to save the day. "You," Izuku breathed, the flames around his arms guttering out in shock. "Me," All Might confirmed, his sunken eyes studying Izuku with an intensity that made him feel like a specimen under a microscope. "Though I suspect you have quite a few questions about why I'm here." Questions. Izuku had so many questions his brain felt like it might short-circuit. "How did you find me? How did you know about the thing that happened? Are you working with those people on the forums?" One at a time, young Midoriya. All Might raised a skeletal hand, and something in his voice made Izuku realize this wasn't a chance encounter. This was planned, deliberate, the result of investigation and deduction. "First, I should apologize. What I told you on that rooftop, it was true for normal circumstances. But these are not normal circumstances. I don't understand." All Might gestured toward a relatively clean section of concrete where they could sit. 3 days ago, orbital thermal imaging detected a massive heat signature originating from the Musutafu area. The temperature spike was unlike anything in recorded quirk databases, too intense, too localized, too primal. It matched patterns I've seen before in other parts of the world. Izuku's throat went dry. "Other parts of the world? Devil fruits aren't just legend, young man. They're real and they're extraordinarily rare. In my 20+ years as a pro hero, I've encountered exactly 3 confirmed cases. Each one possessed power that defied conventional understanding of how abilities work." The skeletal hero leaned forward, his hollow gaze fixed on Izuku's face. 2 days ago, you ate one of those fruits. And yesterday evening, you lost control of the power it granted you. The question is, what do you intend to do with it now? Izuku stared at his former idol, trying to process the flood of revelations. You know about devil fruits, but you told me I couldn't be a hero without a quirk. Because I thought you were quirkless, All Might said simply. I've made many mistakes in my career, young Midoriya, but crushing the dreams of a genuinely powerless boy ranks among my greatest regrets. When I detected that thermal signature and began investigating, when I realized it might have come from you, the older man's expression grew distant, haunted. Let me tell you about the first devil fruit user I encountered. It was 8 years ago in the Philippines. A young woman who could control water with absolute precision, not just manipulating existing water, but generating it from nothing, commanding every drop within miles. She single-handedly ended a drought that had been killing thousands. What happened to her? She drowned, All Might said quietly, fell from a rescue helicopter into the ocean during a typhoon response. The very element she controlled became her executioner the moment she hit the water. That's the curse of devil fruits, young man, incredible power balanced by a fundamental weakness that can never be overcome. The weight of that revelation settled over Izuku like a lead blanket. So if I fall in water, you'll sink like a stone and lose all strength to save yourself. The sea rejects devil fruit users absolutely. All Might's gaze sharpened, which is why proper training is essential. Not just in controlling your power, but in understanding its limitations and working around them. You're offering to train me, Izuku said slowly, hardly daring to believe it. I'm offering to help you avoid the fate of that water user and others I've encountered. Devil fruit powers are incredible, but they're also dangerous to the user and everyone around them. Without proper guidance, he didn't need to finish. Izuku had seen firsthand how quickly his flames could spiral out of control, how easily he could have seriously injured his mother or burned down their apartment building. But why? Izuku asked. Why help me after what you said before? All Might was quiet for a long moment, his hollow eyes focused on the debris-strewn horizon. Because I've seen what happens when people with extraordinary power are left to figure things out alone. Because you rushed into danger to save someone without any thought for your own safety, twice now, if we count your manifestation protecting your mother. Because, he turned to meet Izuku's gaze directly. Because you have the heart of a hero, young man, power or no power, quirk or devil fruit that hasn't changed. The words hit Izuku like a physical blow, driving the breath from his lungs. After years of being told he wasn't enough, couldn't be enough, would never be enough, having his greatest hero acknowledge his heroic spirit felt like salvation itself. What would the training involve? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The same fundamentals I would have taught you if I'd passed on one for all, adapted for your unique circumstances. All Might gestured toward the debris field around them. Physical conditioning, emotional regulation, tactical thinking, and power application. This beach will serve as our training ground, isolated enough for you to practice without detection, and plenty of material to work with. All Might's skeletal features split into something resembling his famous smile. How do you think this beach became such a disaster, young man? Years of neglect, people dumping their problems somewhere they wouldn't have to look at them. Sound familiar? The parallel hit Izuku immediately. Society discarding what it didn't want to deal with, leaving the mess for someone else to clean up. Just like how quirkless people were often overlooked, dismissed, forgotten. You want me to clean the beach, he said. I want you to reclaim it, using your fire powers for construction rather than destruction. Melting down metal for easy removal, incinerating organic waste safely, using heat manipulation to reshape and compress materials. All Might's enthusiasm was growing, his deflated voice gaining strength. By the time we're finished, this will be a proper beach again, and you'll have mastered precision control of your abilities. The scope of the project was staggering. Hundreds of tons of refuse, accumulated over years of neglect, all of it requiring careful sorting and disposal. But as Izuku looked around the debris field with new eyes, he could almost see what it might become. Clean sand, clear water, a place where families could gather and children could play, a place where heroes were born. When do we start? He asked. Right now, All Might said, rising to his full skeletal height. Show me what you can do. Izuku held out his right hand, palm up, and concentrated on the familiar warmth in his chest. The flame that sprouted was small but perfectly controlled, dancing merrily in the evening breeze without flickering or guttering. Good stability, All Might observed. Now make it larger. Gradually, carefully, Izuku fed more energy into the flame. It grew from candle size to torch size to something approaching a small campfire, all while maintaining perfect form and control. The heat radiating from his palm was intense but focused, warming the air around them without becoming uncomfortable. Excellent, now compress it. That was harder. Izuku had to fight his instincts, which wanted to let the fire expand naturally. Instead, he began drawing the flame inward, concentrating its energy into a smaller and smaller space. The result was a marble-sized ball of incredibly intense fire, blazing white-hot at its core while maintaining the orange-red color at its edges. Outstanding, All Might said, and the genuine pride in his voice made Izuku's chest swell with warmth that had nothing to do with his powers. That level of control usually takes months to develop. Your connection to this power is remarkable. It feels natural, Izuku admitted, letting the compressed flame return to normal size. Like it was always part of me, just waiting to wake up. That's the nature of devil fruit powers. They don't just grant abilities, they fundamentally alter the user's relationship with the world. A fire fruit user doesn't just control flames, they become fire in human form. The explanation sent a chill through Izuku despite the warmth of his flame. What does that mean exactly? It means your power will grow with you, evolve as you do, develop capabilities that go far beyond simple flame generation. But it also means the curse of the sea will become more profound as your connection to the fruit's power deepens. All Might's expression grew serious. This is not a decision you can undo, young Midoriya. Once you fully embrace what you've become, there's no going back to being merely human. Izuku looked at the flame dancing in his palm, then at the debris field around them, finally at the skeletal figure of the world's greatest hero offering to guide him toward his dreams. The choice, when he really examined it, wasn't a choice at all. I've never been merely human, he said quietly. I've been powerless, worthless, a burden on everyone around me. If this power comes with a curse, then at least it's a curse I can use to help people. All Might studied his face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. But we do this properly, safely, with full understanding of what you're risking. Your first lesson starts now. The skeletal hero pointed toward a cluster of old washing machines, their white enamel surfaces stained with rust and exposure. I want you to practice precision heating. Warm those machines evenly without melting them, just enough to drive off moisture and make the metal easier to work with. Focus on control, not power. Izuku approached the washing machines carefully, holding his flame-wreathed hand toward the nearest one. Instead of trying to project fire outward, he focused on radiating controlled heat, like a human-shaped space heater operating at precisely the right temperature. The results were immediately encouraging. Steam began rising from the washing machine's surface as accumulated moisture evaporated, but the metal itself remained intact. The rust seemed to loosen and flake away as the steel expanded slightly from the heat, making it easier to clean. Good, All Might called out. Now try the next one, but maintain the heat on the first one simultaneously. That was significantly harder. Dividing his attention between two heat sources while maintaining precise control over both required a level of mental discipline Izuku had never attempted before. Sweat beaded on his forehead from concentration, but gradually he managed to establish steady thermal output to both machines. Excellent, now add a third. For the next hour, All Might pushed him through increasingly complex exercises. Multi-target heating, precision flame cutting to separate materials, using thermal updrafts to lift and move lightweight debris. Each challenge built on the last, forcing Izuku to expand his understanding of what his power could accomplish beyond simple flame generation. By the time the sun had fully set, and the beach was lit only by the orange glow of Izuku's flames, he had successfully processed nearly a dozen pieces of major appliances. The washing machines had been heated, cleaned, and broken down into component parts. Refrigerators had been emptied of hazardous materials and prepared for metal reclamation. A mountain of organic waste had been safely incinerated, its ashes scattered harmlessly into the evening breeze. This is incredible, Izuku panted, sweat streaming down his face from the exertion but grinning with pure joy. I can actually make a difference, I can fix things. This is just the beginning, All Might said, but his skeletal features showed unmistakable pride. With proper training, your power could revolutionize disaster relief, environmental cleanup, search and rescue operations. The applications are virtually limitless. And hero work, especially hero work. Fire is one of the most versatile elements. You can create, destroy, illuminate, conceal, attack, defend, or provide utility support as situations demand. Combined with your analytical mind and heroic instincts, All Might's smile widened. I think you're going to surprise a lot of people, young Midoriya. As they prepared to leave the beach, Izuku felt a profound sense of completion. Not the end of his journey, but the true beginning. For the first time in his life, he had both power and guidance, strength and wisdom working together toward a common goal. Same time tomorrow, he asked. Every day until you're ready for UACE entrance exam, All Might confirmed. Which reminds me, have you given thought to your hero name? Izuku blinked in surprise. He'd been so focused on learning control that he hadn't considered the broader implications of his new identity. No, not really. Think about it. Names have power, especially for heroes. Choose something that reflects both who you are and who you want to become. As they parted ways, All Might disappearing into the shadows with practiced stealth, Izuku heading home to update his anxious mother, the question lingered in his mind. What name could possibly capture the transformation he'd undergone? What identity could bridge the gap between the powerless boy he'd been and the fire-wielding hero he was becoming? The answer, he suspected, would come to him when he was ready for it. For now, it was enough to know that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new growth, new steps toward the future he'd always dreamed of but never dared believe possible. The warmth in his chest pulsed with gentle rhythm as he walked through the darkened streets, a constant reminder that he was no longer the same person who had left his apartment that evening. He was stronger now, more capable, armed with both power and purpose. He was becoming someone who could stand alongside the heroes he'd always admired. Someone who could make a difference in the world. Someone who could finally, truly, save people with a smile. 3 weeks of training had transformed Takoba Municipal Beach Park beyond recognition, where mountains of rusted appliances and decaying refuse had once created an apocalyptic landscape, now stretched clean expanses of sand punctuated by neat stacks of processed materials. The western section had been completely cleared, revealing the natural shoreline for the first time in years. Waves lapped against actual beach instead of shopping carts and discarded tires, and the air carried the clean salt scent of ocean instead of the sickly sweet smell of decomposition. Izuku stood waist-deep in the morning surf, his body radiating enough controlled heat to create a shimmering dome of steam around him. The seawater should have been his mortal enemy, the curse that came with devil fruit power, but he discovered that shallow water posed no threat as long as he maintained active heat generation. The steam barrier kept the cursed liquid from direct contact with his skin while allowing him to work on materials that had been partially submerged. Excellent thermal regulation, All Might called from the beach, his skeletal form bundled in a tracksuit despite the warm morning air. Now try precision cutting on that support beam. Izuku focused on the rusted steel beam jutting from the sand at an awkward angle. Instead of generating broad flames, he concentrated his power into a thin line of superheated air, essentially a plasma cutter powered by willpower and devil fruit energy. The beam separated cleanly with a shower of sparks, its cut edges glowing cherry red in the morning light. Perfect! All Might's enthusiasm was infectious, his sunken features brightening with genuine pride. Your control has improved dramatically. 3 weeks ago, that technique would have incinerated half the beach. The praise sent warmth through Izuku's chest that had nothing to do with his powers. After years of being dismissed as hopeless, having someone, especially his greatest hero, acknowledge his progress felt like validation of his very existence. He waded back to shore, steam rising from his wetsuit as residual heat evaporated the clinging seawater. All Might had insisted on the specialized gear after their first week of training, when Izuku's growing mastery had led to several incidents involving spontaneously combusted clothing. "What's next on the agenda?" Izuku asked, toweling off with movements that had become automatic over weeks of intensive training. "Physical conditioning," All Might replied, consulting the detailed training schedule he'd developed. "Your power is incredible, young Midoriya, but it's only as strong as the body channeling it. We need to build muscle mass, improve cardiovascular endurance, and increase your pain tolerance." The last point was particularly important. Izuku had discovered that pushing his flames beyond certain thresholds came with physical consequences. Not burns, since the fire was part of him, but a deep aching exhaustion that felt like his bones were made of cooling metal. The stronger his body became, the more power he could channel without suffering those effects. They moved to the cleared section of beach where All Might had set up a brutal obstacle course using processed materials from the cleanup. Steel beams welded into climbing structures, concrete blocks arranged for strength training, and sand pits designed to build leg muscles through resistance work. "Today we're adding a new element to your conditioning," All Might announced, pulling a stopwatch from his pocket. Time pressure, heroes don't get to work at their own pace. Emergencies demand immediate response and sustained effort under stress. The next hour was pure torture disguised as training, sprint intervals while maintaining flame generation, strength exercises while keeping precise temperature control, obstacle navigation with complex fire manipulation requirements. Every challenge pushed Izuku to maintain his powers while his body screamed for rest, but it worked. By the end of the session, techniques that had required intense concentration 3 weeks ago felt as natural as breathing. The flames wreathing his arms stayed stable even as he gasped for breath. The heat radiating from his core remained steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. Outstanding, All Might said as Izuku collapsed onto the sand, steam rising from his overheated skin. Your integration is proceeding faster than I hoped. At this rate, you'll be ready for advanced techniques within the month. What kind of advanced techniques? Izuku asked between gulps of water. All Might's expression grew thoughtful. Devil fruit powers aren't just about raw energy output. They reshape the user's fundamental relationship with reality. Fire users in particular can develop abilities that seem to defy physics: flame that burns without fuel, heat that travels without conduction, combustion that ignores normal chemical laws. He gestured toward the ocean, where Izuku's steam dome was still visible as a lingering heat distortion. What you just did should be impossible. Fire and water are opposing forces, yet you created a stable interface between them through pure willpower. That suggests your power is beginning to transcend normal thermodynamic limitations. The explanation sent excitement coursing through Izuku's tired body. So I could potentially develop techniques that don't follow normal fire behavior? Potentially, yes. But All Might's voice grew serious. Such development requires absolute mastery of fundamentals first. Rushing toward advanced applications without proper foundation is how devil fruit users end up dead. As if summoned by his words, Izuku's phone buzzed with an emergency alert. Villain attack in progress shopping district. All citizens evacuate immediately. Both of them were on their feet instantly, All Might's hero instincts overriding his physical limitations. We need to— No, Izuku interrupted, surprising them both with his firmness. You need to respond as All Might. I don't know what I need to do, but I can't just sit here while people are in danger. All Might studied his face for a long moment, clearly weighing training protocols against emergency response requirements. You're not ready for major villain confrontation. Your power is strong, but you lack experience and backup. Then what do you suggest? Reconnaissance, All Might decided. Stay back, observe, look for opportunities to assist with evacuation or property protection. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary, and if you do engage, prioritize escape over victory. They ran toward the shopping district together, All Might pulling ahead as his emaciated form somehow found reserves of speed that defied his appearance. Izuku followed, flames unconsciously wreathing his arms as anticipation and fear warred in his chest. The scene that greeted them was chaos incarnate. A massive villain, easily 3 meters tall with stone-like skin and molten cracks running across his body, was smashing his way through storefronts with methodical determination. Each punch sent shockwaves through the concrete, and the intense heat radiating from his body was setting fires wherever he touched. Magma-type quirk, All Might observed grimly. Civilian evacuation is the priority. The heat he's generating will cause structural damage throughout the district if we don't contain it quickly. As if to emphasize his point, a nearby clothing store's window display burst into flames from proximity alone. Panicked shoppers were streaming out of buildings, but many were trapped by the spreading fires and the villain's unpredictable movement pattern. I can help, Izuku said urgently. Fire doesn't hurt me, and I can create thermal barriers to protect people during evacuation. All Might hesitated, clearly torn between protecting his student and utilizing his unique capabilities. Perimeter only. Keep the fires from spreading while I engage the villain directly. Got it. They separated, All Might moving toward the villain with grim determination while Izuku circled toward the civilians. His first real test as a hero was about to begin, and every lesson from the past 3 weeks would be put to the ultimate trial. A family with young children was trapped near a boutique as flames spread across the storefront's wooden facade. The heat was intense enough to make the air shimmer, but to Izuku it felt like a warm spring day. He approached through the flames without hesitation, his own fire creating a cool corridor through the inferno. This way, he called out, extending flames from his hands to create protective walls on either side of their escape route. Stay between the fire walls and move quickly. The family stared at him with a mixture of terror and hope, a teenager wreathed in flames walking casually through what should have been lethal heat. But desperation overcame fear, and they followed his guidance toward safety. It worked. His flames were apparently compatible with the villain's heat-based attacks, able to absorb or redirect thermal energy that would have been devastating to normal rescue attempts. He moved from trapped group to trapped group, creating safe passages and cooling zones that allowed evacuation to proceed. But as he worked, Izuku began to notice something disturbing about the villain's behavior. The attacks weren't random, they were targeted. Every building the stone creature struck contained high-end electronics or valuable merchandise. This wasn't a rampage, it was a heist with collateral damage. "He's stealing something," Izuku muttered, using his flames to cool a section of superheated concrete so an elderly man could cross safely. But what needs this much destruction to obtain? His question was answered when the villain smashed through the wall of a high-security electronics store. Through the gaping hole, Izuku could see rows of advanced computers and what looked like specialized hero support equipment. The kind of gear that would be incredibly valuable on the black market or to other villains planning larger crimes. All Might was engaging the creature directly now, his deflated form somehow generating enough force to match the villain's enhanced strength. But the molten stone skin was proving resistant to physical attacks, and the intense heat made close combat dangerous even for the symbol of peace. "I could help," Izuku realized. "My fire could interfere with his thermal regulation, maybe even cool his stone skin enough to make him vulnerable." But All Might had specifically told him to avoid direct engagement. The smart thing would be to continue evacuation efforts and leave the actual fighting to professional heroes. Then the villain grabbed a hostage. A young woman who had been trying to retrieve something from her car was suddenly trapped in the creature's massive, molten grip. Her screams cut through the chaos as the heat began to cook the air around her, her clothes smoking from proximity to his superheated skin. "Release her immediately," All Might commanded, but the villain only laughed, a sound like grinding stone mixed with crackling flames. "Flame Hero thinks he can stop molten rock," the creature taunted, his voice distorted by the heat haze surrounding his mouth. "Let's see how well flesh burns." He began to squeeze, and the woman's screams intensified as the temperature around her spiked toward lethal levels. Izuku moved without conscious thought. His flames erupted to maximum output as he sprinted toward the villain, heat waves distorting the air around him like a human-shaped mirage. 3 weeks of intensive training had given him abilities that went far beyond simple fire generation. Now he would discover if it was enough to save a life. "Heat sink," he shouted, pressing both palms against the villain's molten stone arm. The technique was something he'd theorized but never tested, using his fire powers in reverse to absorb thermal energy instead of generating it. If it worked, he could cool the villain's grip enough to prevent the hostage from being cooked alive. It worked better than he'd hoped. The moment his hands made contact, Izuku felt the villain's heat flowing into him like water into a sponge. The molten cracks in the creature's stone skin began to dim and cool, their orange glow fading to red to black as their thermal energy was drained away. "What?" the villain gasped, his grip loosening as his power was literally siphoned away. "How are you?" "Fire serves fire," Izuku growled, his own flames blazing brighter as he absorbed the stolen thermal energy. "And I'm the better flame user." The hostage dropped from nerveless fingers as the villain's arm cooled to ordinary stone. Izuku caught her in a princess carry, his body temperature carefully regulated to provide warmth without burns, and leaped backward to safety. "Impossible," the villain roared, trying to reignite his molten powers. But Izuku had drained too much thermal energy. The creature's stone skin remained stubbornly cool and ordinary, which was when All Might struck. Detroit smash! The punch connected with enough force to send the depowered villain flying through 3 storefronts before coming to rest in a crater-shaped depression in the street. Without his molten enhancement, the creature was just unusually large and durable, no match for the symbol of Peace's legendary strength. "Excellent work, young man," All Might said quietly as sirens approached in the distance. "That heat absorption technique, where did you learn it?" "I didn't," Izuku admitted, gently setting the rescued woman down as paramedics arrived. "It just felt like the right thing to do in the moment." All Might's skeletal features split into something approaching his famous smile. "Instinctive power development under pressure. That's the mark of a true hero, adapting to save lives regardless of personal risk." As police and heroes took over the scene, Izuku found himself standing amid the aftermath of his first real battle. The shopping district was damaged but not destroyed, civilians were safe thanks to his evacuation efforts, and a dangerous villain had been captured. Most importantly, he'd saved a life through quick thinking and creative power application. "How do you feel?" All Might asked as they walked away from the chaos. Izuku considered the question seriously. His body ached from channeling so much thermal energy, his clothes were singed despite his fire immunity, and he felt emotionally drained from the intensity of real combat. "But underneath all of that, I feel like a hero," he said quietly. "Good," All Might replied, "because after what I saw today, I think you're ready for the next phase of training. Advanced techniques, tactical combat applications, and preparation for UA's entrance exam. You really think I'm ready?" All Might stopped walking and turned to face him directly. "Young Midoriya, you just developed a completely new application of your power under combat stress to save someone's life. You evacuated dozens of civilians from lethal danger without hesitation. You stood toe-to-toe with a villain who should have been out of your league and emerged victorious." The older hero's voice grew thick with emotion. 3 weeks ago, you were a boy who ate a mysterious fruit and gained impossible power. Today, you acted like someone who was born to be a hero. If that's not readiness, I don't know what is. As they made their way back to the beach for post-action analysis and cooldown exercises, Izuku felt a profound sense of completion settling over him. Not the end of his journey. He still had months of training before the entrance exam, years of growth before he could stand as an equal among professional heroes. But for the first time in his life, he truly believed he could get there. The flames dancing around his fingers as they walked pulsed with steady rhythm, no longer wild or uncontrolled but purposeful and directed. 3 weeks of training had given him more than just power. It had given him the confidence to use that power in service of others. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new techniques to master, new steps toward his ultimate goal of attending UA High School and becoming a professional hero. But today, he had saved lives and protected innocent people using abilities that shouldn't exist according to modern science. Today, Izuku Midoriya had been a hero, and tomorrow, he would be an even better one. 10 months of intensive training had transformed more than just Takoba Municipal Beach Park. Izuku Midoriya stood before the imposing gates of UA High School, his reflection caught in the polished metal surface showing changes that went far beyond the obvious. Gone was the scrawny, uncertain boy who had eaten a mysterious fruit in desperation. In his place stood someone who moved with quiet confidence, whose green eyes held flecks of gold that seemed to dance with inner fire, whose very presence seemed to warm the crisp morning air. The beach training had built real muscle mass beneath his UA track suit. Months of hauling debris, while maintaining precise flame control, had developed a wiry strength that was deceptive in its appearance. More importantly, the constant pressure of mastering impossible power had forged mental discipline that showed in every controlled movement, every measured breath. Around him, hundreds of other hopeful students clustered in nervous groups, their conversations a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Izuku found himself studying them with the analytical eye that had never left him, cataloging visible quirks and potential combat applications out of habit. A girl with pink skin and horns was gesticulating wildly as she spoke, small spurts of acid eating tiny holes in the concrete where her excitement made her lose control. A boy with engines in his calves was doing warm-up stretches, blue exhaust flames flickering from his mufflers. Another candidate seemed to be made entirely of hardened steel, his metallic skin gleaming in the morning sunlight. All of them were here for the same reason, to prove they had what it took to become professional heroes. But none of them, Izuku suspected, carried the secret he did. Devil Fruit user masquerading as a late manifesting quirk, he thought with dark amusement. If they only knew. His phone buzzed with a familiar message from his mother. "Good luck today, sweetie. Remember everything All Might taught you, and don't forget to eat lunch." Heart suit the heart emoji made him smile despite his nervousness. Inko had been incredibly supportive throughout his training, even when it meant coming home every evening exhausted and smelling like smoke. She'd never once suggested he was pushing too hard or taking too many risks. If anything, she seemed to glow with pride every time he demonstrated new techniques or shared stories of his progress. All Might himself was somewhere in the building, probably in his muscle form preparing for whatever teaching duties awaited. They'd agreed to maintain their secret until after the exam results were announced. No special treatment, no inside information, just a fair test of abilities that had been earned through blood, sweat, and countless hours of training. "Attention examinees," Present Mike's voice boomed across the courtyard, amplified to impossible volumes. "Please proceed to the auditorium for orientation. Time to get this show on the road." The crowd began moving toward the main building, a river of nervous energy and suppressed power. Izuku let himself be carried along, his enhanced senses picking up the subtle details that others might miss. The way certain students unconsciously activated minor quirk effects when stressed. The smell of ozone from electrokinetic abilities, the taste of metal in the air from magnetic fields, the slight temperature variations from ice and fire users trying to regulate their anxiety. He wasn't the only one here with flame-based powers, but he was probably the only one whose relationship with fire went beyond simple generation and control. The auditorium was massive, designed to accommodate not just the current group, but several other testing sessions throughout the day. Izuku found a seat in the middle section, close enough to see clearly but far enough back to avoid unwanted attention. As students settled in, Present Mike took the stage with his characteristic explosive enthusiasm. "Welcome to today's live performance," the voice hero announced, his blonde hair practically vibrating with energy. "Everybody ready to see what being a hero is all about? Let's dive right in." A massive screen descended from the ceiling, displaying a detailed breakdown of the practical exam format. 3 types of robot villains, each worth different point values, scattered throughout a mock urban environment. Students would have 10 minutes to accumulate as many points as possible through robot destruction, with rescue operations and teamwork factored into final evaluations. "The 1-point robots are your basic cannon fodder," Present Mike explained, gesturing to images of humanoid machines armed with simple weapons. "Easy to destroy but not worth much. The 2-point robots pack more punch, stronger armor, better weapons, tactical programming, and the 3-point robots." The screen shifted to show hulking mechanical beasts with advanced weaponry. "These bad boys will test everything you've learned." A hand shot up from the front section, a tall, dark-haired boy with glasses and an expression of intense concentration. "Excuse me, sir. The handout mentions 4 types of robots, but you've only explained 3. If this is meant to test our information-gathering abilities, then surely—" "Great question," Present Mike interrupted with a grin. "The 4th robot is the 0-point, a massive obstacle with no point value that you'll want to avoid at all costs. Think of it as a final boss that shows up to ruin everyone's day." The bespectacled boy Iida, if Izuku remembered correctly from news coverage of prominent hero families, looked satisfied with the explanation. Around the auditorium, other students were taking notes, asking clarifying questions, or simply psyching themselves up for the challenge ahead. Izuku found himself unusually calm. 10 months of training with All Might had included extensive combat simulations, often against multiple opponents in chaotic environments. This exam would certainly be challenging, but it felt familiar in a way that surprised him. "I can do this," he realized with quiet confidence. All those hours of precision work, tactical thinking, power development, it was all leading to this moment. Present Mike wrapped up the orientation with his typical flair, directing students to their assigned testing areas. Izuku checked his slip, Battle Center B, and began making his way toward the staging area. As he walked, he noticed other students clustering together, forming impromptu alliances or sharing last-minute strategy tips. He remained alone, but not from shyness or social awkwardness. 10 months of intensive training had taught him to focus inward before major challenges, to center himself and prepare mentally for whatever was coming. The flames in his chest pulsed with steady rhythm, responding to his anticipation but remaining under perfect control. At the staging area for Battle Center B, Izuku found himself surrounded by an eclectic mix of hopeful heroes. The girl with pink skin from earlier was stretching enthusiastically nearby. A blonde boy with a naval laser was practicing quick-draw techniques. Someone who appeared to be made of dark shadow was conducting what looked like meditation exercises. And there, adjusting the settings on what appeared to be high-tech boots, was a girl with short brown hair and determined eyes who made Izuku's analytical mind immediately catalog her as potential gravity manipulator based on stance and equipment choices. Before he could develop that analysis further, the massive gates to Battle Center B began grinding open, revealing a meticulously crafted urban environment beyond. Streets, buildings, alleyways, and open plazas stretched into the distance, all populated with robot villains waiting to test the next generation of heroes. "Begin!" Present Mike's voice echoed from speakers throughout the mock city. Most of the students hesitated for a split second, surprised by the sudden start. Izuku didn't. He exploded forward in a burst of flame-propelled motion, jets of fire erupting from his hands and feet to launch him over the heads of his competitors and into the urban maze beyond. The technique, something All Might had helped him develop for rapid deployment. carried him 3 blocks into the testing area before he landed in a controlled roll on the main street. Immediately, he could hear the whirring of mechanical movement from multiple directions. The one-point robots were the most numerous humanoid machines with basic weapon arrays that relied on simple programming. Easy targets for someone with his capabilities. The first robot rounded a corner just as Izuku rose from his landing, its red optical sensors locking onto him with mechanical precision. The machine raised its arm-mounted blaster, preparing to fire some kind of foam projectile designed to simulate villain attacks. Izuku didn't give it the chance. Flame Lance, he thrust his right hand forward, concentrating his fire into a narrow, superheated beam that punched through the robot's chest plating like it was paper. The machine's internal systems overloaded from the thermal shock, sparks flying as it collapsed into smoking scrap metal. 1 point. Easy, but he was just getting started. More robots were converging on his position, drawn by the sound of combat. Instead of waiting for them to arrive, Izuku began moving through the mock city with purpose, using his flame propulsion for rapid repositioning and his analytical skills to identify optimal targets. A 2-point robot emerged from an alley to his left, this one more heavily armored with multiple weapon systems. Its targeting sensors tracked his movement as it prepared to fire a barrage of projectiles. Izuku created a thermal updraft beneath himself, using the rising superheated air to launch vertically just as the robot fired. The projectiles passed harmlessly beneath him as he came down directly on top of the machine, flames wreathing both hands. Heat Sink, the technique he'd first used against the molten stone villain, worked perfectly against mechanical opponents. The robot's metal frame conducted thermal energy like a highway, allowing Izuku to overload its systems by channeling massive amounts of heat directly into its core components. Within seconds, the machine was nothing but cooling slag, 3 points total. But as he continued moving through the urban environment, Izuku began to notice something that made his strategic mind shift into higher gear. Other students were struggling with the robot's numbers and positioning. The machines were designed to work together, herding examinees into disadvantageous positions where superior firepower could overwhelm individual quirks. This isn't just a test of raw power, he realized. It's testing tactical thinking, situational awareness, and adaptability under pressure, which meant he needed to change his approach. Instead of hunting robots individually, Izuku began using his mobility and environmental awareness to orchestrate larger engagements. He would use flame propulsion to reach elevated positions, then create controlled explosions or thermal barriers to funnel multiple robots into kill zones where his attacks could hit several targets simultaneously. A group of 5 one-point robots was advancing down a narrow street in formation, their programming optimized for mutual support. Izuku perched on a rooftop overlooking their position and began superheating the air above them, creating an unstable thermal layer that built pressure like a miniature thundercloud. When the pressure reached critical mass, he released it all at once. The thermal explosion wasn't visible fire, it was pure concussive force generated by rapidly expanding superheated air. All 5 robots were flattened instantly, their systems overwhelmed by the shockwave and electromagnetic pulse generated by Izuku's carefully controlled power release. 8 points total. The technique was exhausting, requiring precise control over thermal dynamics that pushed his abilities near their current limits. But it was also incredibly effective against grouped enemies, and the psychological impact on other students who witnessed it was considerable. From his rooftop position, Izuku could see other examinees scattered throughout the mock city. Most were engaged in straightforward combat with individual robots, using their quirks in the most obvious ways possible. A few showed tactical thinking. The Gravity Girl was using her power to turn debris into projectile weapons, while someone with hardening abilities was working with a speedster to create hit-and-run tactics. But none of them seemed to grasp the larger pattern of the exam. This wasn't just about accumulating points through robot destruction. The scoring system had to be more complex, factoring in efficiency, innovation, teamwork, and probably rescue scenarios that hadn't been explicitly mentioned. Which was when he heard the scream, high-pitched, terrified, coming from somewhere deeper in the mock city. Izuku's head snapped toward the sound, his hero instincts overriding tactical considerations. Someone was in trouble, and that took priority over point accumulation. He launched himself toward the sound using flame propulsion, crossing several city blocks in moments. What he found made his blood run cold. The Gravity Girl, Uraraka, he remembered from the check-in process, was trapped beneath a massive piece of concrete debris. apparently the result of a 3-point robot's heavy weapons causing structural damage to a nearby building. The robot itself was still active, its sensors locked onto her position as it prepared to fire again. She was trying to use her gravity quirk to lift the debris, but the effort was clearly causing her severe nausea, probably a side effect of overusing her ability. The robot's weapons were charging, red energy building toward what looked like a devastating finishing attack. Izuku moved without conscious thought. He hit the 3-point robot from above like a human-shaped meteor, both hands wreathed in flames hot enough to make the air itself combust. The impact drove both of them through the street surface and into what appeared to be a utility tunnel beneath the mock city. The robot was heavily armored, designed to withstand serious punishment from student-level quirks. But Izuku's devil fruit power was operating on a completely different scale. His flames didn't just heat metal, they broke down molecular bonds, turning solid steel into component atoms that scattered like sparkling dust. The machine lasted approximately 3 seconds before its core systems catastrophically overloaded. 11 points total, but more importantly, he emerged from the crater and rushed to Uraraka's position, flames forming into precise tools for debris removal. Instead of trying to lift the concrete slab, which probably weighed several tons, he used controlled heat application to create fracture lines that would allow it to be broken apart safely. "Hold still," he called out, his voice carrying the calm authority All Might had drilled into him during rescue simulations. "I'm going to break this apart, but I need you to stay exactly where you are until I tell you to move." "Okay," Uraraka gasped, her face pale from pain and exhaustion. Are you using fire to save me?" "Fire serves life," Izuku replied, unconsciously echoing something All Might had said during training. "Everything else is just application." He worked with surgical precision, using hair-thin flames to cut through the concrete at exactly the right angles. Within minutes, the crushing weight had been reduced to manageable chunks that could be safely removed without risk of further collapse. "Can you move?" he asked as he lifted the last piece of debris. Uraraka tested her legs carefully, wincing but apparently uninjured beyond bruising. "I think so, thank you. Midoriya, Izuku Midoriya." He offered her a hand up, making sure his body temperature was carefully regulated to provide warmth without burns. "Are you hurt anywhere else?" "Just my pride," she said with a rueful smile. "I got overconfident and lost track of my surroundings. That robot would have. If you hadn't." "That's what heroes do," Izuku said simply. "Help each other." A massive rumbling sound echoed through the mock city, followed by Present Mike's amplified voice. "Time." The exam was over. Around them, the sounds of combat died away as students received the shutdown signal. Izuku had lost track of his point total after the rescue, but somehow that seemed less important than it had 10 minutes ago. "Did you get enough points?" Uraraka asked with genuine concern. "You spent so much time helping me." "I don't know," Izuku admitted. "But if saving someone isn't worth enough points to pass this exam, then maybe UA isn't the school I thought it was." They made their way back to the staging area together, joining the stream of exhausted examinees who were comparing experiences and speculating about results. Most students looked satisfied with their performance, though a few seemed worried about their point totals. Izuku found himself oddly calm about the whole thing. He demonstrated his abilities, made tactical decisions under pressure, and prioritized rescue over personal advancement. If that wasn't enough to earn admission to UA, then he'd find another path toward becoming a hero. "Attention examinees," Present Mike announced as the last students returned from their testing areas. "Results will be distributed within 1 week. Remember, this is just the beginning of your heroic journey, regardless of today's outcome." As the crowd began to disperse, Uraraka caught up with Izuku near the exit. "Hey, Midoriya. I hope we both made it. I'd like to thank you properly when all this is over." "You already did," he replied with a smile, "but if we both end up at UA, I look forward to working together again." The train ride home gave Izuku time to process the day's events. He'd used his devil fruit power more extensively than ever before, pushing techniques to their limits and developing new applications on the fly. The flame propulsion had worked perfectly for mobility. The thermal manipulation had proved devastating against robotic opponents. Most importantly, he'd successfully rescued a fellow student without compromising his secret identity. All Might was right, he thought as familiar neighborhoods scrolled past the train windows. This power isn't just about destroying things. It's about creation, protection, innovation, everything heroism represents. His phone buzzed with a message from his mother. "How did it go? Can't wait to hear everything." He typed back, "Better than expected. I'll tell you all about it when I get home." But even as he sent the message, Izuku found himself thinking about the week ahead. 7 days to wait for results that would determine whether his dream of attending UA High School would become reality. 7 days to wonder if his unique combination of analytical thinking and devil fruit power had been enough to impress the world's most prestigious hero academy. 7 days to prepare for whatever came next. The flames in his chest pulsed with steady confidence as the train carried him toward home. He'd given everything he had to give. The rest was out of his hands. But somehow, for the first time in his life, Izuku Midoriya felt like that might actually be enough. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey today. I hope you enjoyed exploring the fascinating what-if scenario of Deku. The possibilities were truly mind-blowing. If you found this video entertaining, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to me and inspires me to bring you more captivating content in the future. Stay tuned for more exciting what-if stories and other amazing videos coming your way. Until next time, take care, stay curious.